Good morning, my good friends at KNUST and NEPAD and everybody else. I'm glad that this technology is working out and I'm able to moderate my morning session. My name is Nkrumah with the African Academy of Science, and I'm sitting here in Nairobi. I regret I wasn't able to join you. I had my everything ready. I went to the airport, but my visa issues wouldn't let me travel. But I'm so happy and pleased that this meeting came this far. I want to thank our colleagues from NEPAD. After almost 1 year of planning together with NEPAD and MSU, with Camille, here we are. To get to my session this morning, we are supposed to be considering in the second panel the analysis in African countries in technological advances for combating infectious and non-communicable diseases. Obviously, as our colleague from Nepal had mentioned yesterday, there are disparities in our capabilities across countries within the continent on how to advance in STI and how to apply it to the various problems that our continent confronts. So this morning we'll be listening to a few analyses from a few countries on how they are applying technological advances to combat infectious and non-communicable diseases. I would call on colleague. I am not there with you, so I cannot see everybody, and I cannot really look at everybody individually. But I'll call on our lead colleague, Professor Nicholas Titiloye of the College of Health Science at KNUST, to please come forth. Do well, please, to introduce yourself very briefly, 30 seconds or so, and then call our colleagues to the stage, and we'll proceed with the session right there. Thank you.
Good morning, organizer, and good morning, participants. It's a pleasure to be here this morning and to discuss things related to health, how we can transfer technology in the health sector, how we can create innovation, and how we can better the life of the large proportion of Africa. My name is Nicholas Titiloye. I'm MD, and I'm a professor of pathology, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. I'll be calling my colleague who will help me to do justice to this discussion to stage. Starting with the first person is Professor Yete Nkrumah of Public Health. Second on the list is Professor Alex Owusu Ofori of Microbiology. And third on the list is Professor Chris Obrikwan of
Recording in progress.
Professor Chris Obrikwan of Molecular Medicine. They are all head of departments in Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. We're going to start our discussion today by just telling you a very short story. So I start by telling you about the gentleman called Yao. Yao is someone that is born on Thursday in Ghana. So you are born on Thursday here, you can feel like Yao today. So Yao has always wanted to be a medical doctor because he thinks the best thing that can happen to him is to be a medical doctor. He's going to make money and is going to benefit the life of many people. So he struggled through the medical school and finally became a medical doctor. He was so excited, he could hang the stethoscope and even go to the market so that people would recognize him as a medical doctor. The excitement lasted for only 6 months. He all suddenly came to the reality that he could not solve many of the problems combating the patients coming to his clinic. He was losing patients. People were dying. Maternal mortality was there. Neonatal mortality was there. He could not provide solution to cancer, and the infectious disease were abundant. While passing through the graveyard, Yao suddenly got some encouragement, like the dead can still teach the living. And he felt, okay, Let me show the line of pathology, go through autopsy, and see whether I can find things from the dead to take care of the living. He started autopsy, and he was doing a lot of autopsy, but eventually he knew that he couldn't find a solution still to this problem. Then he went to cellular pathology. Well, he suddenly started using morphology to treat the patient. And he had H&E to battle with, and he was very happy. Until all of a sudden he found out that H&E could no longer answer the question. Something is happening to the cell to make them behave the way they should behave. And this simply means he has to go inside the cell, which is a form of cell science, and you need to deal with the nucleus and extract the DNA. So he went into the nucleus, and then he started battling with the DNA. And he found a lot of solutions, he found a lot of answers, and he gained a lot of knowledge, and he had a lot of technology that could battle this particular situation. The question today is how much of this technology has y'all been able to transfer to the community? How much of this technology has been able to develop the community as a whole? To start, I'll start with the public health person. Is it going to tell us about how many of these diseases are dealing with our community, creating a lot of problems within our community, and how much Yao's invention has been helpful? Professor Yeti.
Thank you very much for that introductory look at things from Yao's perspective. My name is Yeti Nkrumah. I'm a public health physician, and I'm an associate professor at the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics at the School of Public Health, KNUST here. I think the travels of Yao, as narrated, has actually been something lots of us might have gone through, coming up to a point with optimism and just meeting shortfalls which make you wonder, am I really at the right place? Yeah, but that's life. If challenges don't show up, we do not see our way forward. I'll start this whole discussion here by talking about some of the conditions which, as healthcare practitioners, as healthcare professionals, we encounter over the years. I got into the healthcare delivery system in the late 90s, precisely 1997, after my training as a medical officer in the Ukraine. And at that point in time, wow, showers of blessing. At that point in time, we got into that environment where most of the conditions we met were what we refer today as communicable diseases, or diseases that have infectious origins. Our top 10 diseases were mainly malaria was there, all these other diarrheal diseases, the various infectious diseases caused by viruses, measles and all those types, they form the top 10 diseases, okay? And at that time, we really, though we came from the Western world with knowledge on non-communicable diseases, so we had to readapt, get to know more about the infections and all that. Fast forward 20 years, and we are now having to deal not only with infectious diseases, but we are dealing as well with the non-communicable diseases as we have them now. Hello? Okay, we still have a voice. So, looking back, somewhere around, somewhere in the 90s, as I started earlier on, diseases of infectious origin were as high as close to what contributing close to 67 to 70% of deaths in our country here in Ghana, with the non-communicable diseases, which consist of those four main hierarchies. Let's call it cardiovascular diseases, that's diseases that affect the blood vessels and all that, starting that, followed by disease of the respiratory system, followed by the various cancers, and The fourth being diabetes, constituting, that was in the 90s, constituting about, deaths from that constitute about 20-something percent, 27% roughly. Bring it now to where we are. Non-communicable diseases contribute to close to 49% of deaths in our country, with diseases of infectious origin contributing up to about, together with childhood and maternal death. Currently, as we have it, there is that double burden of infectious and non-communicable diseases. Okay? So, looking forward, moving forward, if we are thinking of ways of managing our health, our focus should not just be on one, but we should be looking at both dimensions of both the infectious and the non-communicable diseases simultaneously, and any efforts that we need to address should be looking at them and not necessarily in the silos we've been observing them over the past years. I think I'll end for now with that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Yete. So we still go further to talk about some other things that happened to Yao along his travel. That came the pandemic. And the pandemic was a disaster worldwide. COVID-19 came around. A lot of people died. There were complete interest in COVID-19, leaving other diseases. Even while those other diseases were killing, it was attributed to COVID-19. COVID-19 catch Yao and the African continent unawares. And for someone who struggled during COVID-19, Yao had the opportunity of meeting Professor Alex Owusu. Professor Alex Owusu, infectious disease and COVID-19.
Thank you very much, Prof. Tiloye. So again, my name is Alex Owusu, and I'm a clinical microbiologist. I think maybe, Prof, you situated me strategically because I'm going to use the transition from the community all the way to the molecular level. And I think COVID is a good example. But my first comment is that sometimes we look at technology in two ways. So if you come to the advanced world of science, see technology something highly complex, very complicated. I remember when I was a student, there was nothing like PCR, which Prof. Chris now does, like, just cooking. But it was such a big concept, I never saw what an ECG was. So immediately after school, when I went to UK, what is this, So we could look at it that way. And then on the other side are things that are so common to us, like the mobile phone and the drones, People use drones now at parties, football, without thinking about the technology of it. But if you look at our current situation in Ghana, we are battling galamsey, which is the illegal mining of gold, the water bodies and all that. Previously, if we had wanted to evaluate galamsey and its effect on health, we probably would have had to walk there to the various sites. If it's in the forest, we need to navigate into the forest. But the technology of the drone just makes us, sit somewhere, send it up, it looks, and then it's able to map out everything. So those are two, ends from which we can look at it. But for us as policymakers, for us as scientists, we need to look at what is available and be able to integrate it into the need that we have and then be able to drive it. Okay? Because it's not as simple as, we have it, let's do it. Because if you are not careful and education does not go on well, You may bring the technology, adapt it, but in the end, the people will reject it, as has been or as was when, for example, in Ghana, we tried to do the Ebola vaccine, and as with all other vaccines, which maybe I'll leave for Chris to say, because say it's some technology, the organism is not dead, and they'll inject you and then you die. So you can make all the policies, but if people don't accept that, then it becomes a problem. So with COVID, what we did initially was that there was just only 1 or 2 institutions who could run the PCR fully. But obviously, the way the pandemic was going, it was not going to be, just wise or ideal just to leave it to those major places. So ultimately, you have a mobilization whereby people from smaller areas or smaller institutions or hospitals
Recording in progress.
go to learn how to perform this and demystify this whole concept of what is PCR. And then ultimately, many other instruments could be used to make it readily available, such that from the beginning, when it used to take about 2 weeks, if you're in Kumasi, to get a result, to know whether you're PCR positive or not, in the latter stages, it was, same day you get it, a few hours you get it. So this was quite a very good way in which we can look at how within a system, technology moves from one higher institution to a lower institution, okay? And it is something that we need to apply across most diseases or, handling all major epidemics and so on. Sometimes we tend to maybe not resist, but think that it is so far off, but it may be a setting in the mind. And that, I think, another very good example is tuberculosis. And using a diagnostic tool, which we call the Gene Expert, which is now available in most institutions. Previously, it was just in a few places. And therefore, if somebody had this disease, this TB, it was so difficult to treat. He has to move all the way to that place. In the process, he's likely to infect other people, all that. Until this was made readily available in most major centers. Okay. But this is, when we go into the detail, an excellent way of passing on something that has been learned, something that is apparently difficult, to something that can be implemented on a wide scale to avert mass disaster, epidemics, and various things that could affect our health. So in summary, we need to look at it from all feasible angles, be able to take it from a point where it is seen as such a complex thing, demystify it, and then be able to apply it across. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Aleso. And why Yao thought it was a joke to get into the nucleus, it wasn't a joke. To look at the proteomics itself and look at antibodies combining with proteomics, looking at immunohistochemistry, to be able to look at some other technical issues like in situ hybridization, things like electrophoresis, and things like polymerase chain reaction. These are no joke. So Yao had to talk to Professor Chris. Professor Chris, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning once again. My name is Christian Obiri-Krine, and I started off as a chemical pathologist, so basically looking at some basic biomarkers that could be able to predict diseases. But certain stages in life, I realized we needed to go deeper. And what it meant was that we needed to look at what is inside the cell. And going into the cell, we needed to go into the nucleus. So here we needed to look at the genetic makeup of the individual. And that is where we realized that at that point, there were some differences that could really help in treating patients. Because what it is that each individual is unique. Even identical twins are unique in one way or the other. So to be able to treat an individual, it doesn't require a holistic approach. And here it requires what we call the personalized medicine. And to be able to utilize a personalized medicine, you need to understand the genetic makeup of the individual. And then you'll be able to tell which drug you can give to the individual. So basically what I do, or what my team do, is that we try to understand your genetic makeup. We try to see whether there are some mutations at certain points. And once we are able to do that, it is able to help us to be able to know which kind of medicine will help you. Because typically, what happens in most parts of our world now is that we give the drug, holistically. And then if it doesn't work, you are asked to come back, and then a new one will be professed for you. But if we are able to look at each individual's genetic makeup, trying to understand what goes into each individual, then it helps to be able to pinpoint and know which drug to give to the individual, to be able to help the individual to be able to combat whichever condition they are dealing with. So what it is that there are some advances that have been done in terms of this area. Some fundings have been provided for some of this work to be going on. The only challenge is that, I think we'll talk about the challenges later on, but then it all boils down to money to be able to fund some of these projects. But believe you me, when you look at the African scape now, there is a lot that is going on in terms of looking at some genetic makeups. You can talk of the H3, which genetics or genomics, which is now looking at a lot of work in areas such as some of the non-communicable and infectious diseases. Now, the way those non-communicable diseases and infectious diseases affect individuals are different. So once you go into the molecular level, trying to understand what happens at the molecular level, it helps to be able to elucidate some pathways, which helps the drug manufacturers to also hinge on that and be able to produce medicines that would help the patient at the end of the day. So I feel once we are able to go in that direction, we'll be able to, curb a lot of the conditions which could have been prevented at the end of the day. So holistically, looking at personalized medicine, I think it's the way to go now, trying to look at what it can, looking at the individual. So here you treat the individual based on their genetic makeup, and based on that, you are able to make advances. Fortunately, now we have a lot of, equipment which we can even deploy in the field. Now we have sequencers that are handheld, and you can deploy in the field to be able to, meet those targets. So I think the future looks bright in terms of this area, and I'm thinking that if more funding and more efforts are put in that direction, we should be able to have a very good, practice of medicine where individuals are treated based on not only on signs and symptoms, but also on their genetic makeup, and that would help to reduce a lot of mortality and mortality that we are experiencing now. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Chris. So, y'all find this surgeon in the laboratory very helpful, very informative. He was so comfortable in the laboratory. Things are discovered. He could have a lot of solutions. Yeah, it's lost in the laboratory. But the reality itself is that the information from the laboratory has to go back to the community. So in the second phase of our discussion, we'll be looking at how this information will get to the community and how we're going to be able to persuade the community to contribute to all this invention. Can we clap for panels to encourage them to go into the second discussion. So I start at looking at the impact on patient and the medical training. First is to bring some facts to your notice. First, the government still keeps spending a lot of money on medical education. It's very expensive. The training for medical doctor is less specific and is quite general. Therefore, our medical education continues to produce the like of YAOs who are able to treat and later get frustrated when they couldn't go further from where they are. The specific technologies in the Western society, even when people acquire it, it is very costly, and the effort to transfer the technology down is quite difficult and cumbersome. A lot of government and NGOs are performing a lot of functions, and I think that is one of the things you are here to do, isn't it? To help us to bring the technology down. Many medical graduates are still escaping to international community in drones. They need to seek solutions to things that they do not know, and they need to better their income. That way you might think is a very bad practice, but they acquire this technology, and we keep on hoping that one day we'll be able to bring them back to be able to help us develop the African continent. Sponsorship for acquisition of technologies mainly through grants. These grants tend to favor the Western society, and the Western society only give grants to Africans in areas that they are interested in. Does it mean that Africa has the opportunity to really develop what will benefit Africa? We need to change the orientation of the community to medicine. The community thinks medicine should be free. We don't need to contribute to drugs. Everything should be provided free of charge. Even the rich and affluent in the community comes to the hospital hoping not to pay anything. They don't contribute to research. They don't contribute to medical education. The larger NGOs contribute to those ones for us. The rich and affluent in Africa needs to start supporting the government. Now we need to talk about the information about Africa. Is domiciled in the Western world. They know more about the disease that we even have in Africa. There is World Atlas of Genome. There is World Atlas of this and that. No African Atlas. No West African Atlas. No Ghana Atlas. No Nigeria Atlas. If we need to participate with them, and we need to collaborate with them, we need to start building those atlases, which will help us to be able to develop our medicine. As we continue to talk about building these institutions, big institutions that will support technology, most of the institutions that we're building seems to assume the role of regulatory, and they do not also understand that to be able to produce this technology is so important, and they need to be given targets on how much of the technology they will be able to produce. So I go over to Professor Yeti. How does your knowledge get back to the community? And how is the community going to be convinced that they need to start participating in their own health?
Thank you very much, Prof. Titiloye. The point about technology getting into the community really appreciating those technologies, does really open up a whole pathway to acceptance of those technologies in the community. As my brother whilst he was speaking, Prof. Usufori was speaking, he alluded to the COVID, no, that was not the COVID vaccine, but the Ebola vaccine in the days where the Ebola vaccine trial was to have been started. At that point, I was at the Kintampo Health Research Center. Lots of the researchers thought they had actually passed on information to the community about what the vaccine trial was going to be. And unfortunately, that communication was at a higher level, not to the level of the community members. So we had all sorts of discussions on air, which were quite polarizing in their own way. Someone would say ignorance, whatever. But you could not blame the community for that, because the community never really had a grasp on what actually that vaccine was going to do. You could imagine a deadly condition out there, and then someone just tells you, I'm coming to give you a vaccine with that condition. What would you think? I remember the scientists even went into parliament as well trying to talk, and then they came up with their scientific terms that, part of in the trial will be blinding A, will be doing this, and people just rose up. You are going to kill us with a vaccine, and you are not even going to blind us as well? So being able to communicate to the populace is a very, very key thing when it comes to some of these technologies. A lot of the conspiracy theories we have today about several life-saving interventions, devices, procedures, stem from that basic way we've not communicated appropriately some of these, interventions to the population. And whether we like it or not, no matter how successful interventions are, no matter how successful technologies are, if the long-term benefactors do not have a fair idea of what those things will do to them, their stake, their contribution to that whole process, believe you me, they will just remain in the lab or wherever they've been created. There's been several successes, though, which we can count on, we can learn from, to be able to make sure that our communities are moving with us when technologies actually develop. Just yesterday, I think that was yesterday, I heard the director of, that's Dr. Amponsachiano, he's the director of at the Ghana Health Service in charge of that vaccination programs, basically. He's got a name for that, but I can't remember that. And he was talking about the successful implementation of the RTSS vaccine against malaria, which has been carried out in 4 regions in some districts on a pilot basis. A lot of effort has gone into it. The Ministry of Health, the Ghana Health Service, for example, has gotten that level of expertise using, of course, a multidisciplinary approach to get information out to people. So over time, that vaccine is being accepted. All these vaccination programs that have been done within the country, there have been that multidisciplinary approach, bringing on board sociologists, anthropologists, whoever matters, for information to be appropriately passed on to the community, to seek their buy-in, to seek their to get that level of understanding about their various roles in making such programs a success. As much information is also provided for people to really appreciate that technology, that intervention, what it is. So I will say, despite everything, there's a lot of hope out there. There are various success stories we can learn from, so that once there are interventions, once there are technologies that are to our benefit, we can get the community to move along with us. Let's bear in mind, without that community, all that our efforts, all the effort we are putting in will be in vain. That's just how I'll conclude it for now.
Thank you, Professor Yiti. Just some few questions. One more for Professor Usa, one more for Professor Chris. So, Professor Usa, how do you think we can keep on getting this technology down to Africa? And how do you think we can adapt this technology to develop a robust technology within Africa?
Thank you very much, Prof. So to this particular question, I think when you were speaking, you talked about grants, talked about availability of resources to the developed world, but not necessarily to us. So obviously, if we are going to get grants from wherever international community, their interests will be what is dominant. So I think one of the steps we need to take as Africans is to cater for our own interests. We are in a global village now, so we've got to learn all the technologies available. But then when it comes to implementation, then we need to implement what is of relevance to us. So learning the technology, and I think KNUST, we have a good example of one of our colleagues who is now so good in doing this point-of-care testing. Dr. Basing is in the College of Health Sciences, but basically now can develop any of the rapid tests for most of the infectious diseases. I know it's a technology that he learned somewhere in the US, but now is able to apply. Okay, so we do not need to wait for the Western world to bring their tests. The tests may be based on principle. I'm not going to go into Chris' area, antibody, add the antigen, blah, blah, blah. But it applies, it's the same principle for every disease. All the diseases will have the basic antibody, antigen. So to be able to detect it, you need that. And the more quicker you are able to get that, the better it is for everybody, because then it will mean quicker diagnosis, and therefore there will be less mortality, there will be less morbidity, and the population will be healthier, and ultimately we will be richer. So I will encourage our governments, our policymakers, and even us as scientists, that we need to share the knowledge that we get from elsewhere, share with our colleagues, share with the community, share with everybody else, so that we are all on the same level. And in that instance, we are able to have the acceptability that Prof. Yete was talking about, and then it's able to transcend further into the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Prof. Chris, let's talk about the training, because I'm in medical education, and even now, KNUST is trying to devise a new method of training medical students. So what do you think about training medical students for specific technologies?
Okay, thank you very much. I think the dynamics are changing now, and there are new technologies that are coming up and new diagnostic approaches that are coming up. So I would think that we need to start thinking of including those in our curriculum, where we are able to include the newest approaches that are used for diagnosis of diseases. And like I spoke about earlier on, I think we should start incorporating the principle of personalized medicine. It's gradually, cropping into Africa. It's still alien in some countries and all of that. But I think it's the way to go now, because if we are to use the holistic approach, it still comes with problems. But if we are able to train medical doctors to be able to understand the importance of personalized medicine, how it works out, and then we should be able to train them in some basic areas of how this whole genomic approaches work, it will help to improve their knowledge, and it will also help to improve their diagnostic abilities, so that they are able to cater for the patients at the end of the day. So all in all, I think if we are able to do that, incorporate some of these new technologies into our curriculum, it will help to improve the patient's care at the end of the day. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So without busting the balloon of Yao overinflated ego to be a medical doctor, is no longer there. He's found out now that he needs better training, he needs community engagement, and he needs strong advocacy for the government to improve its environment. And our medical practice is a teamwork where everybody working in that field is necessary to be able to produce the result. Thank you very much. So I hand it over to you for questions. Or maybe so that we could shorten the discussion, because the second aspect is strongly linked to the first aspect. In the second aspect, we're going to talk more about some of the technologies that are basic, that are readily available and innovations that is there. And I would like to retain my panels here, and I will just add 2 people to them for that. So introducing to you Dr. Bernard Pitashi, Pathology, and Professor Ayesu from Herbal Medicine. Please come forward. No, please sit down. Please, one chair more, so that you will be able to ask us questions together, and then we'll be able to shorten the discussion. So Professor Ayesu is in herbal medicine, and he's conducted a lot of research on how to use herbal products to influence medical practice in Ghana. And this is Professor Ayesu sitting in front of you today, and you're welcome, sir. And Dr. Bernard Pitashi is our new hope in pathology. Excellent gentleman, very intelligent, and is ready to go into the nucleus, ready to go into the community. Is multitasking, is artificial intelligence, is everything. So welcome, Professor Pitashi, Dr. Pitashi, rather. Sorry, it's because you are sitting among professors. All right. So some things important to us about the basic technology that we're going to talk to you about is that we need to centralize laboratory practice to support medicine. And the various laboratory practice does not need to be pockets of laboratory practice here and there, but we need a robust centralized practice that everybody will patronize. And that centralized practice must be able to support everybody. So it's not owned by anybody, it is supporting everybody. Banking and archiving is still a problem in Africa. We don't keep records. Okay? We don't keep records. We don't keep things in our archive. Even when these people want to communicate with us and they want us to go back, we cannot produce the results. Okay? Banking, we do not have it. It's a big problem. Digital initiative and artificial intelligence are technologies we need to go into. We need to build cancer consortium. A lot of patients, for example, in breast cancer, think today that we do mastectomy for them, they will die because of the mastectomy, not because of the cancer, whereas the mastectomy is meant to protect them. So because of fear of mastectomy, they won't even come to the hospital. And it's difficult to get into those people. So we need to build cancer consortium. The primary health care needs to be strengthened. We need to go into the community with primary health care. We need to engage the community on exactly what they want, and we need to supply the appropriate technology to their problem. We need to persuade them on how the DNA will be very helpful. Or else we'll be doing the DNA and everything. When you get to the community, they will run away from you. Medical science and medical education needs an improved curriculum. There has been breakthrough in the area of infectious disease. COVID-19 has taught us a bitter lesson. We need to sustain that. Other infectious diseases are coming in, and Professor Wusu will talk to you more that there is still a problem. So we shouldn't celebrate that COVID-19 is over. We need to re-engineer our institution that is providing support. A lot of the people think the institutional role is mainly regulation. Regulation important, support. And then we need to regionalize repair and supply. So we can have all the reagents in advanced countries. To get it to Africa is a very big problem. If we put it in a particular region, we need to be able to distribute it to Africa, and we need to liaise with our government to be able to produce this. And we also need to start using our herbal medicine to intervene in some of the problems that we have. And we need to start looking at the role of this herbal medicine at the genetic level. So I will start with Professor Ayesu and herbal medicine. Professor Ayesu.
Good morning to you all, and thank you for the opportunity. I would have loved to do a little presentation. I don't know if it's possible.
Yeah, if it's not going to take a long time.
No, just a few slides.
Technical.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to share some examples of indigenous knowledge in health technology from some indigenous companies, herbal companies, and what they have been doing in the direction that we are all going. The first one is to mention the fact that herbal medicine is a course at KNUST. And this course seems to just put together scientific knowledge to support the kind of indigenous knowledge that we have. Again, we have national bodies and some indigenous organizations that have been using the herbal technology to support this industry. We can talk about some of them who have developed mobile apps for their herbal medicine practice. I would want to quickly show you this video of one of our companies here in Ghana. Everything you are seeing is herbal, and it is seriously supported by organizations like the World Bank, the government of Ghana, and a few others. What we are trying to say is that this particular company is having a smart farm, a farm that is controlled by a mobile phone. So wherever he is in the country, he is able to regulate the watering system. He is able to regulate how much he has to do the watering. If the levels go down, he can activate the pump to instigate the watering of the farm. Again, he also has a smart production system, which is completely controlled by AI. And his aim is that he's going to produce a herbal technology for natural learning and health in Africa. I can move on to COA research. Yesterday,
Recording in progress.
Our keynote address was given by Dr. Kwame. Dr. Kwame is a pharmacist, and he went to COA research to help him overcome his herpes virus infection. And so I had a chance to speak to the CEO of COA, and he confirmed all that Dr. Kwame said yesterday. He is also come out with the COA mixture, which is doing wonders, including curing HIV. Please, you heard me. Curing HIV. And he is using a number of technology. I came across COA Natural. The first one was COA. The second one is KOA. KOA is into cocoa production. He is preparing natural cocoa drink from the white pulp that is around the seed. And he is connecting directly with the community. So every cocoa farmer is paid directly from him. So if you buy his product, there is a proceed that goes directly to the farmer. If you can scan this code, you can get a lot of information from COA Natural. I can talk about Kantanka Herbal Pharmaceutical and Research Center, all in the central region, and their aim is to use current scientific technology, which is backed by the FDA, Food and Drugs Administration of Ghana, and they are also on their own producing a number of herbal pharmaceuticals which qualify for export and for anything you can think about. But the considerations we need to make is that we need to make sure that intellectual property and cultural ownership are respected. Again, we want to say that there must be the community-led and participatory approach, and that is what KOA is doing, where the farmers are directly involved. We want to show the power in dynamics when it comes to historical trauma so that people are not disengaged because of history as to how people have been cheated. We are talking about integration with existing healthcare systems. I want to spend a minute here because the Ministry of Health of Ghana has established the TAMD. TAMD is Traditional and Alternative Medicine Practice. And this directorate is directly involved in establishing herbal clinics in our Orthodox hospitals. Currently in this country, we have about 55 of such groups. KNUST trains herbal medicine candidates who are employed as herbalists in our Orthodox hospitals here in Ghana, so that we are integrating the practice of medicine to involve all the indigenous companies that we can have on. And with all this, we are also supported by a group that we call the, this group, let me call their name here, a group that is preparing a monograph of plant materials for the entire Ghana, which would be good or available to the whole of West Africa. In all these, there are challenges because we have not completely appropriated intellectual properties, and then funding is an issue. The integration is not being complete, but we are moving on. And then there's language and communication barrier, which we need to talk about. And so a number of key stakeholders are involved. We have the GAFTRAM, the GAM, the Ghana Health Service. All these come in to support the fact that we can actually get our products marketed appropriately through the available technology. I want to end here so that the rest we can talk about. Thank you very much for the time.
All right, thank you very much. I mean, it's because of time I was enjoying the presentation, honestly. But I'm going to let Dr. Bernard Pitachi talk to us about the laboratory, the role of immunohistochemistry, centralizing immunohistochemistry to support the whole Ghana, talk about pap smear, talk about HPV testing, talk about single cell sequencing. He has a lot to talk about. So let me leave him to talk. Yes, Dr. Pitachi.
Okay, good morning once again. As Prof introduced me, I'm a pathologist. Now, in Ghana, when you mention that you are a pathologist, most people will just assume that, okay, that means you work with their bodies, and that's it. But for us, the core of our duty is really to look at cells and then look at tissues to diagnose cancers, and then help with the management of patients after that. So this brings in the field of cytology and then histology for for pathologists. Those are the things that we tend to concentrate. We spend most of our time on. So most of the things I'm going to be talking about will be related to things that we do to solve the problem of cancer, which is a major non-communicable disease that affects us in Ghana from childhood all the way to the elderly. Now, we gather a lot of data when we do when we look at cells and we look at tissues. We are able to look at this the cells and tissues and make a diagnosis that, okay, there's this particular cancer in this patient. Based on this, we recommend that the clinician gives this particular treatment or that other treatment. Now, this in this new realm or in this 21st century has been augmented by several new technologies that people have introduced, which unfortunately we are still in the early stages of in most parts of Africa. So these new technologies include doing molecular studies, which include some of the things that Prof. Nkrumah has already mentioned. But for pathology in particular, the main molecular study that is routine now is the immunohistochemistry. Now, immunohistochemistry, when we do it, it can give us some indications that there are certain proteins that people's cancers come with. And these proteins, when we know they are present, we can target them with specific antibodies. So it's also talking about some of the things that have been mentioned, where you have antigen-antibody reactions. Now we are preparing, the pharmaceutical companies are able to prepare antibodies that can target some of the proteins that are within our cancers. Now, if a pathologist is able to identify this, then we are able to produce or we are able to administer it to the patient, and then that patient can have a reduction in the cancer burden and then a possible cure if the technology keeps improving. Now, we also do a lot of other molecular studies. We have the immunohistochemistry, we have the in situ hybridization. We also look at the genes to look at the genome of the cancer, and then the RNA that is present in the cancer, all to help us determine personalized cures. That's the realm that we are moving into now. Now, also in the lab, we also have new advances that include scanning of all our slides. Now, when we are able to digitalize our slides, what it means is that you've created an archive that future pathologists who are going to train will be able to utilize for their training, instead of sitting down and waiting for a new patient to come in and then getting the slides from that one to use. Now, you have a whole stock of 20,000 to 100,000 slides, and you know some of the conditions we look at are very rare, and we don't always have access to them. So if it is archived in this way, you also have access to very rare cases that have been seen in the past. So digital microscopy is very important to us. And now we've also moved into the realm of artificial intelligence. Now, there was a time when if you mentioned that machines will replace the work of pathologists, we would just laugh at you because we thought that, well, it was not possible. But we've seen that artificial intelligence is really improving, and it's at such an astronomical pace that if we don't start taking or participating in the process, we will be left behind. So there are a lot of projects that are ongoing where these digitally scanned slides are being read by machines, guided by pathologists, of course, to be able to read this. Now, the aim is not to replace the pathologist, but rather to make the work easier for the pathologist. Because the truth is that there are not enough pathologists, even in more advanced countries, for the number of cases that they are getting. But if the workload can be lessened by the use of artificial intelligence for screening and then selecting the cases that are more that are likely to be malignant and selecting those ones for the pathologist, it makes the work much more easier. So, and then we have also new advances which include some of the things that we are doing right here in KNUST, where we are looking at circulating tumor DNA to try to determine the one modality is to use it as a screening tool. So right now, for a cancer like breast cancer, for instance, the routine is, or for in Ghana, most of the time it is caught when the patient notices a lump. The problem is that if by the time you are noticing a lump, then most likely that tumor is not only in the breast, but has gone to other parts of the body. So a mastectomy may not be curative if you wait to see the lump. Now, if it is caught earlier by doing routine mammogram or ultrasounds, and then they identify that there's an issue in the breast and then take out the tissue, then that helps to catch it at an earlier stage, and then a simple wide local excision or mastectomy may be sufficient to cure the cancer in this person. But now still, so the technology is now improving, where now we can take someone's blood and then test the blood to see if they have DNA that is coming from a cancer. So with that, we can do a yearly screening, for instance, and then whenever we notice that you have circulating tumor DNA, then we can start the remedy quickly. Also, access to the DNA gives us access to some of the proteins that are likely to be produced by that cancer, because the DNA determines what cancers are there, and hence we can also initiate certain therapies even before the person can see with his naked eye that there is a cancer. Okay, because the key to curing cancer is catching it early. So these advances are helping us a lot in doing all of this. Now, what is the current state of Ghana in terms of pathology? Currently, we have very few pathologists. The number of active pathologists are less than 30. Yeah. So it's a major problem for us in Ghana. And that is going to require that we do a lot of training. And like I mentioned, some of the technologies that we have will help us do the training, because with just 30 pathologists, we are not doing a lot of subspecialties. So we don't have a lot of specialists in, let's say, breast cancer, in gynecological cancer, in brain cancer. Most of us tend to be general pathologists. Now, if we have this access to digitally scanned images, someone can decide, okay, I'll take all of the ones that belong to the brain and look at them over and over and study deeper and deeper, and then that person is a specialist in that area. So that's one realm that's...
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen and ladies, your panel. Questions? Yes, sir. Yes. Dennis, yes, sir.
To hear comparative analysis of the availability of technological advances, if not for the Africa as a whole, at least for West Africa, in line with the theme of that panel too, if you look at the theme. But I'm glad with the second part, because especially this issue of indigenous knowledge of health, as we saw in the presentation, the two core activities, that's the way it is, it should be. Last year, I was at the Grand Challenges in Dakar, and we saw so many AI tools that have got great potentialities in healthcare delivery. I was expecting to hear something like this in the second part of the presentation, after the first part on pharmaceuticals, but I didn't hear. Is it possible to hear from any of the panelists what are the tools that are there with great potential for improving healthcare delivery? And again, related to the pharmaceutical presentation, I would like to know the difficulty in patenting some of the research outputs. This is because we know that some of our countries have got offices for technology acquisition and promotion that guide researchers to prepare patents. And when the patents are available, like in my country, Nigeria, there's the Industrial Development Bank. NOTAP links the good output with them, and also it links the others with Agric Development Bank. So I wanted to hear if there's something like that in this particular beautiful country of Ghana and beautiful University of Science and Technology, Kumasi.
I start off with my experience. I think about 6 years ago, we used ALO machine, and we're reading lymphocytes, because we find out that these lymphocytes play vital roles in management and the prognosis of breast cancer. We expect the lymphocytes to protect the human being, but the lymphocytes are just present, abundant in breast cancer, and are not protecting human beings. So we wanted to find out exactly what they were doing. First, we need to quantify the lymphocytes, and then next thing is we need to find out what they were producing. So we deploy a machine, okay, through some algorithms, and then we went further to use the machine to count the lymphocytes, having looked at pathologies to pathologies variability. And the machine scored more than 90% in counting the lymphocytes. And there are publications coming out of it today in which we have found out that the stroma plays a role, the lymphocyte plays a role. The tumor cells are able to silence the lymphocytes, and if we use immune modulation to activate the tumor cells, it will improve the management of breast cancer. I think you are doing something on machine deployed to diagnose benign and malignant breast cancer, and also machine deployed to be able to read circulating DNA. Please, Prof wants to hear.
Yes, so that is one technology. So it's an improvement on what Prof did in the past. So now we are trying to now use the artificial intelligence to look at digitally scanned images to try and predict whether these are going to show areas that have cancer and then areas that do not have cancer. And then the pathologist can now look at those areas more precisely and then make a more determined diagnosis. So the artificial intelligence is something that we are trying to introduce, but then it will also require that we do a lot of training of stakeholders and produce and provide a lot of equipment to the various hospitals. So one of the points that I would have come to was about centralizing our labs, where, for instance, in Ghana, in our middle belt, we can have a central lab where tissues from all parts of the middle belt are brought, they are processed, images are scanned, AI can help us to screen the images for those that are likely to be malignant, and those images are sent back to pathologists who are closer to the patients and who can also advise the clinicians at where they are. Because currently we have pockets of labs all across the country trying to do something but not able to do it efficiently because they don't have the equipment and have enough funding to do so. So centralizing these things can help to alleviate this thing. And there's actually a technology that borrowing from another part of Africa. In Kenya, there's Dr. Kibera, who is a pathologist that set up a pathologist network. And this is exactly what he is doing, and it is helping to improve the practice of pathology in Kenya. Thank you.
Do you have other comments to what Prof has said?
So I was just going to give an example of the utilization of mHealth in the eradication of hepatic filariasis, which our colleagues, Professor Deborah and co are using. And in the pilot phase, it's more than double the case detection for the actual manual follow-ups. So this is actually now, this was done in the Kassina Nankana district in the north, and it's now being deployed across. Because at this stage of almost elimination, it's more difficult to actively look back. In this case, where community people have been trained on the use of the voice service for mobile. When any hydrocele, elephantiasis, or anything is seen, then the service is activated and quickly mopped up. So there are quite a number of these approaches being used, and I think that it's a simplified way of implementing something that is readily available across to everybody. It's not, you are not now going to import something so demystified, but just something that everybody can relate to and is being applied and is being utilized appropriately. Thank you.
In the area of community health as well, maternal, child and newborn health and all that, there are all these mHealth approaches as well, which are being used at diverse levels for decision making, both by the mothers, by care providers and all that, to make sure that the knowledge which has been, or evidence which has been generated over the years to enhance improved maternal and child health outcomes are going on. And these are several studies which are going on around in our community. I just can't narrow down on any specific author to that one. Recently as well, I know our immediate past pro-VC has helped with the support of the Institute of IVI, International Vaccine Institute, established a vaccine center at Asante Achim Agogo, where so much is being done, which I would say the development of vaccine, in the trials and all that kind of stuff. So there are all these developments that are ongoing. If we really knew we had to talk to some of these specifics, we would have really pulled quite a catalog for you to, but just to let you know that there is
process is happy. Okay.
There's so much going on, which, I think, thank you very much.
He says it's happy, yes. Prof, I used to.
A little from the technical working group that is trying to digitize every plant. Okay, so right here on KNUST campus, we have a physics garden where if you visit with just your mobile phone, you can get every information about a particular plant, what it is used for, its pharmacological effects, its side effects, and the various diseases that it can be used for. Now, we are also trying to put all this together in what we call the plant monograph, and work is still ongoing. And so, in the next couple of months, we'll be launching this with the WHO for Ghana and for West Africa. Thank you.
I don't want to scare the crowd. That's your favorite drink called Sobolo, or the one they call Sobo in Nigeria. We found out that it's a vital staining. It has vital staining property in histopathology diagnosis. And by the time we start activating that, we are going to mop your Sobo. And I don't think it will be available for you to drink. I said we need to plant more. Yes, Professor, we'll come to you. Professor first, then.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof.
Yes.
I thank you and your very formidable team for your contributions. You started by accusing we Africans that we don't have maps of diseases, atlas, and I will start by accusing you yourself. If in a forum like this, you cannot educate us because your title talks about situation analysis in Africa. By the time each of us should be leaving this hall, what are the list of some of those communicable diseases? What are the list of some of those incommunicable diseases? Yes, the panel did some fairness to identify cancer. Looking at it in a nutshell, you may say it is a non-communicable disease, but the fact that in a family, the parents had, the grandchildren had, I think there should be some sort of communication in it. But that notwithstanding, I would like to take the panel to the aspect of statistics. Take, for example, most of you came out as eminent scholars, professors in 2000. We are talking about the situation analysis in Africa. What is the prevalence of cancer? If you cannot go Africa as a whole, in Central or West Africa, what was its prevalence and what was the cause? Probably lifestyle, feeding habits. Now, what are the technologies used to overcome it? It may be just simple advice. Your lifestyle is like this. If you stop feeding at this time, it will reduce. Technologies is not something too big. They are simple things which we encourage for application. It maybe is the diet type. But now, with your panelists, can you give us a list of those communicable diseases and non-communicable diseases? What were their prevalence in 2000? And what are the technologies that have been used? Because it goes along with the second aspect of it, application. If we don't know the list and what are probably the orthodox way or traditional ways of improving them, then the application of the orthodox system becomes doubtable. Thank you.
Okay, Prof, I think we have the the values, the epidemiology, that is not the problem. The atlas we're talking about is genomic atlas. That is where all over the world now people are contributing genomic finding into a central atlas so that we can see the DNA of African, Caribbean, African American, Asia, and the Caucasians, and we can compare the way the diseases are affecting them. And if we introduce a new drug, we can look at the performance of that drug based on this genomic atlas, which is being domiciled, and we don't have that in Africa. As for the epidemiology, he's an expert. Please, Professor Yete.
Thank you, Prof. I think I tried talking about it when I started, but possibly it's the way I sequenced stuff. Yeah, because I remember talking about me entering the healthcare system in the late 90s, and the predominance of infectious or communicable diseases. Fast forward to 20 years now, and somehow we having that by dual burden. Okay, the communicable diseases, which are predominantly malaria has been the case. Tuberculosis is still around with us. HIV is still showing its wings in there. Infectious diseases that affect newborns are still a key thing with us. And diarrheal diseases, for example, are also still having their part to play. Though over the years, with improvements, all those various preventive programs, the vaccination programs and all that, have ended up really bringing them down to appreciable levels, but still these infectious conditions still hold sway in our care system. When we come to the non-communicable diseases, the cardiovascular conditions hold sway. They contribute to most, and in actual fact, when we are talking about these epidemiological things, we relate to...
You need to come down a little bit of this cardiovascular disease and telling me about hypertension, arteriosclerosis, vasculitis, because when you pull all of it together, he didn't know that you were talking about hypertension, for example.
That's the pathologist talking.
Okay, thank you.
He's bringing it down for us. Yeah, so when it gets to the non-communicable, as we said, cardiovascular, we'll be looking at mainly attributing to hypertension.
Ischemic disease.
Yeah, hypertension could contribute ultimately to the strokes, to heart attacks. Okay, they are quite the key killers within our population. More like contributing to deaths of lots of people below 60 years of age. Okay, right from the cardiovascular, which has hypertension and all that as the top one, we come down next to diseases of the lungs, where asthma is a key part of that. We know a lot of our people work in environments where they are exposed to lots of dust, lots of pollution and all that. Recently, even I'm looking at these Galamsey things going on, and I'm seeing our people working in conditions which I'm wondering, how are these people even thriving with all the pollution around themselves, more so the ones they are pushing into our environments and all that. So diseases of the lungs are also on the rise, where all these chronic obstructive lung diseases are contributing enormously to deaths in our population. The third in line of the non-communicable disease will be the cancers of the various origins. And let's not forget, there are some of these cancers which are attributable, like cervical cancer in women, attributable to infectious origins. Okay? So we might see a cervical cancer as we think it to be, but it's got that infectious touch as well to it, which is something we should bear in mind.
So which is the leading cancer in Africa today? I think he wants to know that.
The leading cancers, okay, we might look at it in men, and we'll look at it as female, well as, yes. When it gets to men, we'll be thinking of more of the liver cancers, as well as that of the prostate as well, being something which we should be paying attention to. When we get to the women, cervical, breast, as well as the livers and others are also quite, I think the pathologist might confirm that.
Yeah, so Bernard, over to you.
So
quickly, sorry, let Bernard just roll out the cancers in category quickly. Bernard?
Okay, yeah, so breast cancers in general tend to be the most common cancer in most parts of Ghana, in Africa, sorry. Elsewhere, they tend to have more lung cancers because of their risk factor, which is smoking. But in Africa, smoking happens less often, particularly in West Africa. So we tend to get a lot more of breast cancers. I must say that in the past, like Prof said, we had a lot of cervical cancers being more common. But then because of the advocacy, introduction of pap smear, and then the certain vaccines that have been introduced, although not at a national policy level, but that individuals go for, it has helped to alleviate cancer burden in terms of cervical cancer. So we are trying to identify ways of also doing similar things for breast cancers, prostate cancers, and then the other cancers that we are facing.
And also very common for both male and female is the liver cancer, the colorectal carcinoma. These are all still common and they are all killers. The lung cancer is not as common in Africa like you are seeing in the Caucasian, whereas the lung cancer is the major killer all over the world, but we don't have too many of the lung cancers in Africa. Notwithstanding, a lot of these cancers that we see are not existing, maybe existing, maybe our record-keeping abilities where we're not being able to detect them. I think we may have been able to answer your questions, isn't it? Thank you.
Can I just add a bit more?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought the third was the cancers.
Yes.
The fourth, diabetes.
Diabetes,
okay.
Yes.
Diabetes is really here with us. And the interesting thing about diabetes, the top four that I've mentioned now, is that they are also linked, aside the genetics. We can't run away from the genetics, but to the environments in which we live. Our behaviors, our, how do you call it, activity levels, our nutritional levels.
Our food.
Our food, whether we like it or not. They all do contribute to that. Of course, there might be other contributing factors though.
Are you suggesting that we are all obese?
I didn't say that. I've been obese since I ever lived. But being obese is as well a risk factor to all these top four conditions. Let's not forget, beyond these four, there are all these ones of thalassemia, which we don't talk about much. Until recently, I bumped into someone, sickle cell disease. All these other genetically disease that are linked more to genetic origins and all that.
And we forgot to tell them that there is hope for people with sickle cell today because there is stem cell transplant, which is even with us in West Africa at present. But like I was discussing with him yesterday, what did you say about the stem cell transplant, Professor?
You want us to go there? Lots of these modifications we are making, let's be aware of them as well, because the environment works together with a lot of these genetics as we move along. If we are tweaking genes for today, we might think we've done quite some good work. We are seeing it in agriculture, though I'm not an agriculturist. When we were kids, maize was the trouble of maize was weevils. But today the maize is even not growing enough for the weevils to attack it. So just because of those modifications. So despite the fact that we might be driving these gene changes, we should also be circumspect that there are other counterfactuals we are not aware of as we are moving along. But let me just add, mental health is another key thing which is affecting our populations, which we are not really paying that attention to. Mental health is a non-communicable condition. And you can imagine most of the things we're able to do here is based on our faculties that we can consciously think through things, analyze. If that capacity is impaired, you can imagine what we become. So mental health is another aspect of non-communicable diseases that our focus, and a lot of the stresses we go through, a lot of the things we do end up having that effects on most of our population. So as we discuss all these things, let's be conscious of our mental health as well. Any chance we have, let's call attention to it. Anyone who we see as deviating from what we know as the norm, it's a call for help. We shouldn't stigmatize that person. We should actually go in, provide as much help to those people so that they would also be as relevant to society as
yes,
possible.
we're being given the opportunity to extend our discussion till 11 o'clock, so we have 20 minutes more. Before you answer the question, can you let him ask his question, then it may be part of the things you answer, then you continue from there. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Professor Titiloye. I think I'd like to commend you for moderating this particular session very nicely. And to all the eminent professors for their inputs. It's one session I've enjoyed very much. Now, the medical profession is awash with a lot of instrumentation. And when Professor Nkrumah was talking, I think he mentioned something like the hand sequences, something which is very simple. You can take it to the community and then take data which will help you to be able to write better prescriptions. What is Africa doing in that front? Are we just talking about it and living it? Because we need to develop the instrumentation. It is very critical. If we are not doing it, and we are waiting to buy instruments, medical instruments from abroad before we can do our diagnosis, it's neither here nor there. So what are we doing from that front, from the perspective of of Africa? My second point is the World Atlas of genomes. Whose responsibility is it? If Africa doesn't have it, who is supposed to step in? Who is supposed to lead the process? Do we just leave it as it is? Since we are participating in the global community, someone has to take the lead. So we can't just say that we have a world atlas and we don't have an African atlas, let alone a West African atlas. Who leads the process? To Professor Ayensu, 55, these things now approved traditionally to be absorbed into the orthodox medical clinics. This is, well, we will say better late than never. It's a good thing which is actually happening. But I'm sure he said the name of Ghana Pharmacopoeia. It's a publication on this plant, this plant which has been published. I think it's hosted by the CSIR. He's talking about a new launching of something. I'm not quite sure about that. What are they doing? What are they doing to build on the Ghana Pharmacopoeia?
Going to chip in the biggest problem we are facing now and which we probably are going to face many years, which has been discussed at WHO UN General Assembly last week, and that is the problem of antibiotic resistance. So this is, if we are not careful, is going to kill us more. In fact, at the moment, it does kill us more than COVID was doing. Okay. And not to go so much into details, I think the way we prepared for this was not to go too much into specific details. Otherwise, if we take the problem of antibiotic resistance, if we take the gram-negative organisms, which now are our commonest causes of infections or sepsis, E. coli, for example, about 70% of them are multi-drug resistant. And they all have genes that will produce extended spectrum beta lactamase, which is one of the enzymes that is responsible for not making the drug work. Now, this comes about because we misuse or overuse antibiotics. Okay. And these organisms are also spread by various ways, contact and so on and so forth. So now with the various technologies, we know that these organisms exist here. Therefore, in practice, for example, if somebody has such an infection, that person should probably be put in isolation. You use infection prevention control measures to prevent the spread because its treatment is difficult. Okay, so these are things that we know about, which we have been able to show to the genetic levels, which kinds of genes are existing in which locality, and therefore you are able to use the appropriate antibiotics in specific instances. And that information needs to be shared across board, and for all of us to know that it's not every infection that we are going to use every kind of antibiotic, but the more we use antibiotics, the bigger the problem is going to be. So I thought it's important that I bring it up, since this is the message that is going to go across for the next several years.
Yes, it's a very beautiful contribution. I mean, we need to use antibiotics and use it effectively and not depend too much on antibiotics. And we need to allow the human immune response to be able to develop the ability to handle this infection themselves. Professor Chris?
Okay, and so I think the question was on what is Africa doing in terms of technology for some of these molecular areas. So I can tell you that there are some advances in the areas of, especially in terms of this genetic polymorphisms, looking at them at various areas. For instance, I remember I had to learn a technique about PCR and then LDR. This has to do with an alternative way to sequencing. And everywhere to cost it at that time, which is about 3 years ago, each patient was supposed to pay as low as $4. And this was very complementary to sequencing. And this, when you come to my department, we do that as part of the routine research we do. And then also, I was talking about this handheld sequencers. Fortunately for my group at KCCI, we were able to get one as a gift, which we are going to deploy in the field very soon. So
you got one. You got one.
Oh, okay.
So we need to note, he got one. How many do you need?
So I mean, there are a lot that needs to be, got
so our problem is?
Has to do with, finances. It boils down to finances to be able to, but then I came across certain AI tools that are being developed by some students in Ghana. And one that caught my attention was using an AI tool to diagnose cataract. It was so interesting. All you needed to do was to download the app, take a shot of your eye, and then you had about 90% diagnosis chances. And this was developed by a student who was part of a project work at Ashesi University. And then when I saw it, I felt this is, an improvement. And when you look at it across board, people are also trying to do a lot in areas of, some of this. But then, again, it all boils down to money to be able to finance some of these things. But then I think in our small way, we are trying to do what we can to be able to, augment it. Now, talking about the genome bank, I think there are about 3 or 4 projects that are now currently going on, trying to create the genome bank for Africa. I think the H3 Africa is trying to do that. I think there's a project which is being funded, I've forgotten the name, which is currently based in the University of Ghana, which is also trying to look at the various sequences for, creating genome banks for the African continent. So by and large, there are pockets of, this projects that are going on. The only problem is that they are not centralized. So it becomes a problem of, pockets here and there. But I'm sure with time, and if we are given the right, support, we should be able to, succumb some of this and to be able to create a very formidable force that will help to improve some of these gray areas which still lingers in Africa. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so still answering your question too. Thank you, Professor Chris. The genomic thing and the responsibility, we cannot give it to individuals. We can't give it to private. It has to be strictly regulated by the government. So it's the duty of the government to institutionalize all these genomic things. DNA is just one aspect that we're not going to give to the private. because you don't want to wake up one day and you see another person looking like yourself, and your wife gets confused, does not even know whether it's you or it's another person. Because when a horse was cloned, U.S. government stopped that cloning. I said you cannot move forward. Later on, U.S. government permitted cloning to be able to produce eggs, gizzards, and some other products. This is a government regulation and institutionalization in genomic work. So the genomic work, that's why there are pockets that he's talking about. I'm sure it's funded by people, NGOs outside the country. But the person to really be the habiter of the one that is owned has to be Ghana government. And we can't run away from that. Professor Ayuso.
Thank you very much. I would want to add a few things in addition to the Ghana Herbal Pharmacopoeia. The people who wrote the Ghana Herbal Pharmacopoeia were also responsible for helping with the West African Herbal Pharmacopoeia. In addition to this, we do have the anti-malaria drug policy, which for the first time in the history of this country has allowed herbal medicines to enter. This used to be the preview of only doctors prescribing medicines for malaria. But this time, we have herbal medicines that have entered that policy. Again, we do have what we call the Herbal Essential Drug List. This is also another publication from the Ministry of Health that is supporting herbal medicine doctors to do their prescriptions. When you go to these hospitals I talked about, there's the herbal unit that a patient can opt to go for herbal or for the orthodox. So whichever way you go, we have a herbal medicine doctor that would see to your problem. What we do at the academic level is to make sure that we are also able to pick these plants and have fingerprints of their active constituents. So we are able to establish appropriate shelf life for these medicines. The problem is, for most of our herbal medicines, is that they don't even know why we should say that a herbal medicine has an expiry date. And so they just put anything there. But that must be backed by data. And that is exactly what we are doing with most of the herbal companies in Ghana, helping them to develop stability indicating methods that can help to establish the shelf life of these medications. So all these are going on, Prof, just to support the indigenous knowledge. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take two questions first, and then we'll see if we can respond. We just have 5 minutes. Sir, your question, and Ma, your question. Yes, we'll take all the questions, then we'll respond. Let's start.
Yeah.
Can I hear me?
Thank you very much.
Please, can we write the questions down? So that
my question builds on the panelist in the corner where he said health is affected by so many factors, right? So all over the world, One Health approach has been promoted. So I would like to hear perspective of the panelist on the One Health approach. And do you celebrate One Health here at KNUST? And the second question is, there's a lot of talent and experience based in diaspora, African diaspora. You visit any hospital, any university, or any company in US, there's so many African scholars. How are you connected with diaspora in this health, especially in these emerging technologies? Thank you.
Okay, diaspora connection. Okay, Ma.
Thank you. My other 2 points have been addressed. But one that I would like to ask is about policy environment. We know that when it comes to technology, be it in health, agriculture, whatever, having an enabling policy environment is really crucial for the adoption of the technology. So I'd like to hear your experiences as far as this is concerned and how this can be improved.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sir.
Mr. Moderator and our panelists, great contribution. I think why we're taking much time is because health is wealth and we're directly involved or affected. Is it equally true that most of the cases of death or poor practices has been ascribed to the use of obsolete equipment or what they call post-laboratory tests that has led to most of our African people going out, what we call medical tourism. Is it true? I want to share an experience, please, briefly. Is it equally true that most of our practices in Nigeria are scared of encouraging modern tools of diagnostic for fear that they will lose their job? I had an experience. Well, all thanks to the CJED. My name is Oman Dave, a resource person for CJED in Nigeria. I developed a concept where you could use your phone to assess MediHealth, especially at the hard-to-reach area or the underserved areas. And we looked at this because we looked at the number of mortality and child death in Nigeria being almost the highest in Africa, and it's still going and counting. And we now said, okay, with the services of the cloud services and broadband services that we had, Microsoft and one of the telcos in Nigeria that supported us, to develop this concept using what we call the first point of diagnosis. Some nurses in those areas that they had retired to the villages because of insecurity, most of them had taken off from that place, but the nurses will retire there. So we take opportunity to use them within their own locality to helping the people there, the vulnerable, the older ones, the children, the pregnant women. Of course, you know that the number of pregnancy-related deaths in Nigeria is among the highest in Nigeria, as well as the children. We tried deploying keke, what we call the tricycling, to moving those people from those remote areas to the nearest primary health care. Nigeria has well over 40,000 healthcare facilities, but each of these facilities is of almost, you know what I'm talking about. There it is. Now, getting these people there, I met with the head of the Primary Healthcare Institute, wonderful presentation we did. He called his management team, we sat, he said, wonderful presentation you have in here. A situation where, with the help of the broadband and the cloud services, with the list of the phones, not necessarily Android or the iOS or something, you could call the call center and those nurses will attend to you. Then at the same time, the first point of diagnosis, which is close to you, you can come there to be attended to via text messages, either virtual, WhatsApp, chat, or whatever as it were, depending on the kind of phone you have. Then that we did. Then we came down to the point where you could talk to us, then we link you up to the nearest hospital, laboratory, pharmacy around your area. So it made life easier for people not to move from one point to the other. It made life easier so that you will not be kidnapped, as the case has been in most part of that part of the world. Moderator, please. So we did all of this. And when they saw this, they said, oh, wonderful concept. It will work real good. Now, the question now was implementation. He called a department in primary healthcare. We had series of conversations. We had virtual, we had physical, over 20 of it. And they gave all the assurances that we're going to work. Then I now deployed the team, the Microsoft team. I deployed the telco team, and we sat. That was my first time of meeting their technical team, because when we were discussing, now, what they wanted to do was, let's do meets with them, then have an integration, then start the process of piloting. After a series of meetings, the director sat and looked at me and said, this is a wonderful concept. It will work real good and solve our problems. But you know what? My greatest fear is that our jobs will be taken from me. Ladies and gentlemen, the guys from Microsoft almost carried it. I said, I didn't get you. And she said, you said that? He said, yes. And we are skeptical. That was why they kept taking me from one virtual meeting, physical meeting, trying to see if I would give in or give up. I didn't give up until we got to hear that. And the guy stood up and said, Dave, have you promised to collect something from this guy? I said, for where? The other guy said, Ma, can you give this a try? This thing looks like something that will break and bring about the needed help that you all need. And ladies and gentlemen, that thing to this day has not seen the light of day. Thank you very much, and God bless us.
Okay, so your comments, sir.
Thank you very much, moderator. Mine is a brief one. In fact, it is interesting to hear from our learned doctors that drugs from the Western world was favorable to the Western societies, and not to us. And historically, we have actually also perfected the art and the science of using herbal medicine.
Recording in progress.
But incidentally, when we were in school, the creme de la creme among us went to medical school. When they finished, they were in the forefront of always playing down on anything traditional. Now, luckily, with Professor Adams' intervention, we have the herbal medicine. And when you look at herbal medicine the way it has got precision, it is personalized. Because when you think of how to take some of the herbal medicine, they say, take a mouthful. The size of my mouth actually corresponds with my body. And so on with another person. But Western medicine, they say, take a teaspoon of this, a tablespoon of that. And the tablespoon content will not be sufficient for my body mass. And this is what we have promoted all along. And now we are having series of sicknesses that are alien to our forefathers. Young children, young ladies having fibroid, hole in the heart, kidney problem, and so on and so forth. Meanwhile, in some nationalities in Africa, the terminology for medicine is derived from the extract from the leaves and the extract from the roots. That is the terminology for medicine, which means all what we need to heal ourselves is derived from the plant that lives in our communities. But we have successfully and systematically played down on this vital technology our people have, fronted for the West, and now we are having some of these diseases that, were not known to our forefathers. So, Professor Yesu, I'm very much interested in your mission, and we want to see how far do you want to fast-track your sector of the herbal medicine. It will not be just a small section within the orthodox in our hospital, so that it can also become a frontline component of health delivery in our part of the world. Thank you very much.
So, looking at all the questions, let me quickly take some things off so that we'll be able to concentrate on the rest. Sir, I will take the One Health approach to let you know that the person that was supposed to present the situation analysis of entrepreneurship in the health sector yesterday is a vet medicine professor. And that is how you can be able to understand how KNUST has been able to integrate all the health sector, into one health approach. And it's been celebrated to go around the world to different conferences. There are grants backing one health sector that is helping KNUST still at present. It's only we didn't want to go too much into details, but one health sector, one health policy is favorable to KNUST, and we are also championing that.
Can I just add to?
Yes.
There's one of our colleagues is actually a member of the Lancet Commission on One Health, and he, together with his team, it's actually within the College of Health, they are pushing a whole lot. The GWAC program and all that are part of that One Health.
And that is led by Prof. Deborah. Prof. Emikpe is there, and I wish they were part of this
Dr.
particular
and all the other
discussion. Then the diaspora connection. Our people in the diaspora has been very helpful. We can't run away from the fact. Even if they are not with us in person, anytime they have the opportunity to contribute to us in Africa, they are ready and they are willing to do it. But we need to go deeper on how to tap more from them. We all live our twist. We always ask for more. So for the diaspora connection, maybe some of my friends will also want to talk about it. And when you talk about the policy environment, where the policy, KNUST is center of policy. There are more than 42 policy booklet guiding practice in KNUST. All my colleagues who are professors here knows that you have to read those booklets, and even it will take you more than 1 or 2 years to be able to read the booklet. There are conferences in all of us understanding these booklets. There are a lot of policies on so many things. The government also has policies that guide what we do in the health sector. Do the policy needs improvement? Yes. But we first need to practice the policy before we start improving it. So we need to encourage our people to read the policies, practice it first, then we troubleshoot the problem that we get from it, and we'll be able to go further.
Can I add on the policy aspect
yes.
as well? A lot of the things which we talk about in policy as well, not to belittle what you said, a lot stems from the beginning of what we do. If I start a program or an intervention or a research program and I don't bring along those who are in the policy making space, it gets difficult when I just get to the tail end and I push it at them. Because they being part of the process right from the beginning, I mean the policymakers and all that, being part of everything right from the start, enhances their understanding, enhances their inputs into that policy, makes them feel part of that whole policy-making process. So for policies to develop, we don't have to work in isolation in our little silos and then we just come and dump it on the policymakers. Let's get policymakers along as we move. And most successful outcomes that we've seen with the Ghana Health Service, with the Ministry of Health, have all been because they have moved, the policymakers have moved along with that whole process till the tail end to enhance its actual use ultimately. So that's one thing I just want to draw attention to. Thank you about that.
Yes, and if obsolete earth can cause, sorry sir, just 1 minute. This obsolete equipment and debt. Yes, obsolete equipment means debt. So it's a simple answer to that. So you are deploying obsolete equipment, obsolete technology, obsolete knowledge, and even the knowledge that you had about 2 or 3 years ago, you need to keep on moving forward. Obsolete equipment, obsolete knowledge means death of the patient. I think the chief moderator is calling us for time. If we say health is very important, we need to give due respect to time. But I mean, like I said, these are your people, and the conference still continues. Even we're not discussing on the stage, we meet on the corridor. There will be networking, so the discussion continues. Can we give a round of applause for the panelists? Sorry, Professor Ayesu, there will be more time for you to respond. Yes, moderator.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Titore. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Again, sitting here in Nairobi and following this discussion, I really regret I wasn't able to be there. I wish I had been part of this very rich conversation. The content, at least to our audience there, I'm not sure how many are online. I would hope our IT can give a sense to know how many have called in addition to those in the hall. This is really what excites many of us about the CJED, the Calestous Juma dialogue. This really reflects the richness of ideas, of work happening in some of our universities. And KNUST at the forefront, the level of activities going on at KNUST, there couldn't be a better host for this event than this. And I want to congratulate Professor Francis Davis and TCC at KNUST and the whole establishment for showing us the example with such detailed scientific activity. But this brings us to the whole raison d'etre of the Calestous Juma dialogue and the tech transfer effort that we at the Academy of Sciences started last year, which collaborated to bring this work together. And that is, see what KNUST is doing. What's happening in Benin, in Niger, in ECOWAS area, and the rest of Africa? How does this kind of effort radiate across the continent with all our different capacities? Does this stay only within Ghana because KNUST has access to Ghana? Or how does this impulse and support a continental effort? Can KNUST work alone? Can you in your own research lab work alone and achieve progress? So the spirit of this conversation and this whole event is to pull together like this, to go beyond conversations and say, we need a community effort to push this forward. Often we might talk about funding and politicians, They are not the practitioners. Somebody has to inform them. There's hardly anything that has worked very well within political circles, policy establishments, without collective effort. Many of us will not succeed at all. Individually, we'll do very well in our research and have our publications and have our accolades, but as a continent, as a region, and I'm so happy to see our colleague from Nigeria, our senior brother, I saw his face on screen, that he's here, being the seat of ECOWAS, and our other colleagues from Southern Africa. So I want to encourage that as we wrap up, this is the second day, as we wrap up, let's consider how this effort, this various work that is so exemplary and inspiring can be replicated or can support or can reverberate across many other universities on the continent. We have Anglophonie, we have Francophonie, we have Lusophonie. If you look at the ranking of our universities, top 10 in the world, top 100 in the world, top 1,000 in Africa, there are different capacities and very few are doing what KNUST is doing. So what I'm getting to is that out of this conversation, can we consider how to strengthen the community of tech transfer institutions where this idea goes to market? One of the issues is the production of the solutions and innovations out of the university as we are doing. STEM-enabled entrepreneurship. Another aspect is economic policy, but regulation. You will recall that in the 90s, for example, not so long ago, Chinese products were very cheap and being laughed at in many markets around the world. Now they are going to the moon and their products dominate. Even if our products are cheap right now and they're not very strong, we need government regulation to protect and enhance us. Because foreign dumping of cheap solutions that don't help us undermine our ability to get our own solutions to market. So all the innovations, our universities, our hospitals adopt them quickly. Our medical systems adopt them quickly. When they are confronted with externally subsidized solutions. China subsidized their industry. So does US. So does all these developed countries, except us in Africa, who don't protect the market and give space for us. Give us incentives to go. But how do they do this? We as a community have to be on the table and have a collective voice. So I am saying this to give the spirit of the whole event and say, out of these encouraging and inspiring discussions, let's consider not to be siloed, but to see how the continent can come up with a tech transfer community that looks at all the challenges and opportunities and prospects and say, alone you can't go too far, not a good conversation. But together, we can bring African solutions to African markets for African problems. These things can have space in Cameroon. So I can go on, but I'm very encouraged, and I really thank the presenters and the example here. It couldn't be better. I thank NEPAD for this conversation. These are really African solutions to African problems. And for all the systemic problems that may make it go to see vision quickly in our lifetime, as a community, we can do good. So I would encourage that we think community approach, collaborative approach, collective approach. For your problems and problems, your market value is our market value. We can create entrepreneurs and millionaires out of this. They get collective effort. Because when a solution goes to market, money is on the table. Now, I'm informed by our host that especially to accommodate those from out of town, out of Ghana especially, our US, NEPAD and other African collaborators and Indian collaborators who are here, they would like to give you some relaxation this afternoon and take you around to see some cultural and touristic sites in Kumasi. So they would like to follow the program to end a little faster, and then there will be a long day of fun and catching up on what we have learned. This is supposed to be a lunch hour, a break hour, not lunch, a break hour, health break as they call it. But they like to invite the speaker who was scheduled for 2 p.m. on your program to come on quickly and make their presentation so that they can first study things and earlier in the day and take a little touristic side viewing. The 2 p.m. speaker was supposed to be my good friend. I've known him since about 2012 when I first came to KNUST, Professor Bobo Bay. He's a big name in the innovation community on the continent. He's working in cassava and agriculture. I've talked to him many times. Please come on forward and make your comments. We had 1 hour, but please bear with us. We want to give our visitors more than just good conversations and ideas and inspirational talks. We want them to feel Kano, Kumasi, the headquarters where Michelle is located, and one of the cultural prides of Ghana. So you get a real chance to see outside your hotel room. Please, Professor Bowe, make it no more than 30 minutes, if you will. A few questions, and then we'll take a break for the next session. Again, thank you very much, colleagues, for a wonderful conversation. Yesterday and today has been very inspiring. I look forward to the rest of the day being as inspiring. Professor Bobobe.
Good morning, colleagues. And then thank you very much, Professor Ekam. And then I remember we met several times, and I'm happy about that very generous introduction you have made. Yeah, I've been dealing with my colleague, Professor George Yaobi, to make a presentation on intellectual property and legal frameworks. But I've modified the topic a little bit, and then added a case study of innovative technology to unlock the potential of cassava as a multi-dollar billion industrial crop in Africa. So the outline we follow is intellectual property and the main pillars, IP toolbox, and then the main branches, challenges facing developing countries regarding IPR, or intellectual property right development, justification and rationale for the KNUST Master of Intellectual Property Program, which is a collaboration between our university here and then the African Regional Intellectual Property Organization that is in Zimbabwe. Then, there's a question, who gets IP if AI generates the innovation? Then I will take you on a walk on the innovations in an African agriculture, the case study of the tech mechanical cassava harvester, then we'll conclude. So the objective is intellectual property and legal frameworks, and then the case study as has been mentioned in the topic. So what is intellectual property? Intellectual property is actually the creation of the mind, the intellect. These are fruits of human creativity and inventions, literary works or artistic work, symbols, names, and images used in commerce. So virtually all of us here are scientists. We have written a paper one way or the other. Those papers, sometimes we have offloaded the copyright to the publishers. So we've all actually been generating intellectual properties one way or the other. But whether we have been profiting from this, that is the issue we shall be talking about in this conversation. So intellectual property is a legal concept, and it includes copyright, trademarks, geographic indications, patents, trade secrets, plant variety protection, even so many others. The same intellectual property is also a social construct that defines intangible borders as opposed to real or tangible property borders. Intellectual property is a business asset that can be valued and traded. Intellectual property is an instrument to achieve humanitarian objectives for the good of humanity, like we saw during the COVID. And then intellectual property is a policy tool to foster investments and innovation. So it's a very, very critical point. But sadly, because we Africans, we are not traditionally or historically a capitalist community. We believe in communalism. That's why there has been a lot of challenges in this area. So the toolbox the slide we are seeing here, that there are two main branches of intellectual property. The copyright and related rights, which include literary works, books, poems, adverts, computer programs, musical works, the songs we have been singing, artistic work, artistic creation, dramatic works, work of action, signal, carrying information, and so on. So copyright and related rights are actually expressions or representation of ideas, not the ideas themselves. Then the second branch, main branch, is industrial property, which is functional or technical feature of objects or articles. And these include patents, utility models, industrial designs, trademarks, branding, geographical indications, integrated circuit, plant variety protection, and trade secrets. Patent and utility models, they are almost cousins. One is for a longer duration, which is normally 20 years, and then utility model is for a shorter duration, sometimes about 7 years. So the main pillars of intellectual property are, first of all, the technology must be generated by a human being. An engineer, a technologist, a musician, and also. Then it must actually appeal to somebody who has the money, the entrepreneur. So it must have a business appeal. Then the lawyers come in to litigate. The lawyers and then the enforcement agencies, the customs, the immigration, and all those things. But for most of the time, it has been, because it has been taught mostly in law schools, everybody believes intellectual property actually is for lawyers, but no. In fact, the technology must be generated first by the scientists and other human beings. Then they will do the litigation for you. So a patent is actually the legal document that describes an invention and grants the property right to the inventor or owner. An invention is a new, inventive, and industrial applicable technical solution to a given technical problem. A patent can be granted for new inventions or any new and useful improvement of an existing invention. Patent gives the owner an exclusive right for an invention, a product or process that provides a new way of doing something or that offers a new technical solution to a problem. And mostly it's for, that grant is for 20 years. So the main pillars of patentability, for something to qualify to be patented, it must be novel, it must be new. Nobody should have seen that improvement before. Then it must have inventive steps, how to build upon it, how to get it into this. And then it must have industrial application. If this thing satisfies, if that innovation satisfies all these three criteria, then it will be granted. Now, most of the time in Africa, we have been falling foul of releasing or disclosing some of these things, and then we actually violate the novelty. That means like this conference, you come, you want to always say that I've done something. The moment you show this thing, and then it comes to the public domain, then that component of making it to be patented will be, violated and to disqualify it. Then copyright is a bundle of rights which allows the owner exclusive rights, and this includes copy or to reproduce the work, publish, perform in public, communicate the work, make an adaptation, rent articles containing the work on CDs and this time pen drive, prevent importation of infringing works, and then assign or sell or license this right. So this, but in Ghana, this portion has been well developed than the industrial component. Now the question is, who gets an IP if AI generates the innovation? The world, major countries have actually refused to grant the right of IPR to artificial intelligence. But if you use artificial intelligence to develop an innovation, you, the human being, the warm-blooded person, you will be given. But it's only in South Africa, among all the countries on the globe now, it's only South Africa that has more or less granted AI the right to get a patent. Now this is a short video I want to play about AI. Sophia, control room, can you? Volume. The okay, actually, okay, we can skip this. This is a typical robot that is even, addressing a conference of rich sheikhs in the Gulf. And you can see, this is communicating with an interviewer intelligently. So that's how far we have gone. But there are also some dangers involved. It's not only the useful aspects of AI that you can get from this robot. You can even get, terrorists also in future if we are not careful. So that the science that is emerging now, it is relevant that we actually master it very well. So the challenges facing developing countries on intellectual property rights, this include one, lack of awareness of the importance of intellectual property for development. I think I've explained that already. Africa, we are communal. Get something you want to share. And eventually violate all those things. And then, although all African countries have established intellectual property institutions, capacity and skills are still a problem. We don't have the human resource, we don't have the people, because awareness is not there. Even here, among us, even though we are a leading university of science and technology established by Kwame Nkrumah, the Africa of the millennium, our awareness of intellectual property is also not, very high. Then there's lack of adequate regulations for the management of intellectual property rights on the continent. And also there's lack of adequate infrastructure for the operation of the intellectual property office. Lack of examiners to perform high quality substantive examinations. There are two things. If you want to if you submit a document for patenting, we have what we call formal examination and then substantive. Formal is to see whether you have the name there, the title page and all those things. That is what you have done. That is like you think is exclusive to you. Innovation, but you have to admit those are what you call the prior knowledge, the prior arts, and all those things. But we don't have the people, the warm bodies that can do those substantive examinations. Most of these things are done outside, and even on the continent, most of the IPs are owned by foreign foreigners. Then the procedure in certain IP offices are also very cumbersome. It is true. I was frustrated when I was young. I wanted to do something. I was told, forget about those things. Then many IP offices are still lagging concerning automation. Then we have two regional bodies on the continent, ARIPO and OAPI. These two bodies, ARIPO is for the Anglophone countries, and then OAPI is for the Francophone countries. There are some Lusophones who are in ARIPO. But the question is, why, when it comes, ARIPO and OAPI, they belong to, ARIPO and OAPI, they belong to the UN body called WIPO. But why is it that only in Africa that you have the Lusophone, the Francophone group, and then the Anglophone group? So when you register in one, because patent is territorial, if you register in one, you are restricted for enjoying the benefits in the other one. Meanwhile, when it comes to FIFA, we don't have Francophone FIFA in Africa. When it comes to WHO, we don't have Francophone WHO, Anglophone WHO. You need all those things, all those technical wings of the UN body. But when it comes to intellectual property, then Africa, we are pigeonholed. And this is also one major drawback. So this thing, some of us have been complaining seriously in several forums, and then I think we need to look at it. It is one way of also inhibiting innovation by Africans. Then the legal frameworks. There are several. We have national laws, and each country has got a unique system of legal protection for IP. So the United States, we have the United States Office for Patent and Trademarks and Copyright. Ghana, we have the Copyright Act at nice state made in 2005. The Patent Act at 2003. And then I think virtually we have all of them. But whether people are aware and then they are using it. The European Union too, they have this, the European Union Patent Office and several. We have the Korean Intellectual Property Office, the Japanese one, several countries. And these people are protecting, the innovations from their countries. As for the international treaties, there are also several. One is the Paris Convention that provides for the protection of industrial property, including patents and trademarks across member countries. the Berne Convention that focuses on the protection of literary and artistic works, ensuring that creators have rights across all the filing of patent applications, rights across all member states. Then we have the Patent Cooperation Treaty, the PCT. This facilitates the filing of patent applications in multiple countries through a single application process. Then International Union for the Protection of New Varieties, the UPOV. This treaty ensures the protection of new plant varieties by providing plant breeders with exclusive rights to propagate and sell their varieties. This one, there is a lot of debate whether Africa will still, and then this one, and then the boundary between this, and then the GMO issues is not so, clearly defined. So then we have the trade-related aspect of the intellectual property right, the TRIPS agreement, and this is as part of the World Trade Organization framework. TRIPS sets minimum standard for intellectual property protection that member states must adhere to, ensuring a global baseline of protection for innovators. It covers patents for the technological and biotechnological inventions, copyright protection, plant variety protection, promoting the development of new high-yielding crop varieties through innovation. And also, we have licensing and contracts. I think Professor our friend from Michigan State, talk about it, about the way they have been licensing their innovations in Michigan to a lot of entrepreneurs. So licensing is a key method of monetizing intellectual property. If you are an innovator or scientist, you may not be a very good entrepreneur. It was said by Dr. Mikado yesterday. So you license this to those who have the money, those who have the willingness to run with it. So the owner of an IP, like a patented agricultural machine, that we shall be talking about now, may license the right to manufacture or distribute the invention to third parties in exchange for royalties or other payments. This will free you to do what you can do best. Then we have exclusive licenses. Dr. Meredia talked about it yesterday. Only the licensee can use the IP. Then we have non-exclusive licenses. Then multiple parties may be granted rights to use the IP to prevent monopoly. Then we have cross-licensing. Two companies may exchange rights to their respective intellectual property, such as machinery, design, and other things. And then before then, we have even trade secret, like Coca-Cola. The formula of Coca-Cola is a secret. It has been registered. And that's why all these years, nobody can produce something close to Coca-Cola. So here in KNUST, based on all these things, ARIPO, which is a regional body responsible for IP in the Anglophone countries on the continent, had decided to set up a center of excellence to train IP professionals in KNUST. And because IP has got 3 pillars, technology generation, business appeal, and then litigation, the first one they started was in Mutare in Harare. That is for SADC. And that was actually installed in the business school in Mutare in Zimbabwe. And that is actually the pioneer that school that has been training IP professionals on the continent. Then KNUST was identified sometime because of our science and technology background to actually host the Center of Excellence for the technology generation component. So we focus more on STEM graduates. Then the University of Dar es Salaam, the law school, hosts another one which actually focuses on law. So these are 3 centers of excellence that are established by ARIPO on the continent. They are training manpower to actually solve this problem and then to help the smooth functioning of our AFTA. So this is, the issue about the background there. We started the first admission in 2018, and then we are just about to complete the 6th cohort. And then I think we are making very much progress. We offer MPhil in intellectual property. So the objective or focus of the KNUST program is to provide an in-depth training and expose students to a wide array, dimensions, and interface of intellectual property, policy, and regulatory issues as they apply in a broad spectrum of societal developmental issues. And the focus is to develop regional, especially ECOWAS and Africa as a whole, tailor-made approach to delve into the best intellectual property right approaches that can be used, taking into account the context of the region and the continent. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take you on a case study of an innovation we have developed that we have taken through the IPR process, and then we have commercialized it, and then we are, making some headway. Typical example. So, this is in an agricultural technology, and historically, the plow actually is the agricultural equipment that has kick-started, modern civilization, and ultimately made our modern economies possible. And we all know that agriculture is actually a grueling and then a laborious business. And mechanization actually reduces the drudgery, increases outputs, and allows operations to be carried out at the right time. Yesterday, somebody lamented that, agriculture is used as a form of punishment in Africa, and because of that, we hate agriculture. It is true. If you say I should kneel down or I should weed, when I've assisted my grandmother in the farm, when I finish school, I'm not going to the farm again. And that has deprived Africa of the able-bodied, intelligent young men who actually drive the industry successfully. So the benefits of mechanization globally can be seen, and then typical example can be seen from the United States of America, that, according to the American Society for Mechanical Engineers, in the last century, that's the 20th century, the four most important achievements in the US of A by this society are: 1, the car; 2, Apollo, sending somebody to the moon; and then 3, power generation; and then the 4th one is agricultural mechanization. And that's why they have actually solved their food security problem, and they always give the whole world food aid. So when you come to Africa, or this map is telling us about the relationship between the power we use or the mechanization we adopt on the farm and hunger. If you use low level of mechanization, the hoe and the cutlass, you produce low food, and for that matter, it will not be sufficient for you, so there will be hunger. So you can see, the farm power technology, typology. On the left, most African countries and South American countries, they are in different colors. It's only South Africa, in Africa, that is actually having the same, a level of power use on agriculture like the first world. So South Africa is the only first world when it comes to agriculture, mechanization, agriculture development of the continent. And this is by courtesy of apartheid. And you can see it when it comes to hunger. There's nothing like hunger there. But the rest of us, you see those deep red. So this discussion is focusing on just one crop, cassava. And there are several reasons why I've chosen cassava. I'm from a rural farming family. I've assisted my parents when I was a young man, and I hated the whole idea about some aspect of this crop. So cassava is an important crop nutritionally because it's actually very full of carbohydrates. But most of the time they are telling us that if you eat carbohydrate, you develop hypertension and all those things. And cassava is food for billions of people on the globe, according to the Sustainable Goal 2. And Africa is the global leader in cassava production, but is the least exporter of cassava products. You can see this map. These are the producers of cassava. Africa, right now, we produce almost 65%, close to 2/3 of the global production of cassava. But when it comes to the revenue from cassava products, Southeast Asia tops. It gets Thailand and China, they get about 98% of the revenue from the export products of cassava. Why? In fact, it is not a food for those other countries, but it is actually a staple food for us here. But the way we produce it is that we use the rudimentary Adam and Eve technology, and then for that matter, it's only satisfying our small, homestead food security. But if we should inject modern technology into it, it is likely we'll quadruple the yield, and then still cater for the home security, the food security, and they have the surplus, which will actually now upload to the world stage. And that is the essence of this innovation. So these are the 10 leading producers of cassava on the globe as far as FAO is concerned. And you can see Nigeria, Dr. Congo, Thailand, Ghana, Brazil, Indonesia, Vietnam, Angola, Cambodia, Tanzania. If you go down, all of them are in Africa. But those that are not in Africa, they are the ones that make the money. So what are the challenges to cassava production in Africa? One, smallholder agriculture is dominant on the continent. Agriculture is also a way of life, and it's not treated as a business. And then agricultural labor is aging. The young ones are not interested because of the drudgery that is involved, the pain that is involved in doing manual work. And also, cassava is planted traditionally randomly, just like broadcasting. There's no path in it, so there's no way you can mechanize. And until recently, there have not been any known mechanical commercial cassava harvester developed, on the continent. This is the way cassava is planted traditionally. The way it is, there's no way any machinery can go into this. So you have also prevented the use of mechanization already. And when you see the changing role of human beings, the labor, human being labor, when we started from Adam and Eve, bending down, then we move on to use of animal power, we standing. And these two, can you see them? Genesis chapter 3, verse 27, that is when Adam and Eve were cursed to use the hoe and the cutlass. And then when you go to 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 19, Elisha was using 12 teams of oxen, and Elijah came, and they went somewhere. Then, by the turn of the 18th century, then James Watt and others started with the external combustion engine. And we are building on that up to now. So we have the first industrial revolution started by James Watt using this steam, locomotive, coal, and then the rest. And now we are in the fourth industrial revolution. But the bulk of our food production in Africa is based on the Adam and Eve technology. Why should it be so? Why should it be condemned to this type of painful life? So this is just some statistics to tell you that among the tasks involved in producing 1 hectare of cassava, it takes a minimum of 173 days labor to do it. But among all these tasks, harvesting is the most painful now. So we have actually focused on harvesting. This is the way cassava is harvested manually. When the ground is soft, maybe you will be able to pull one. If it is not, most of 2 of you or 3, you have to combine forces. If it is, it is a little bit soft, you have to use the long-handled hoe. And this is something that you cannot do on a sustainable basis. This is a blister. This lady was a student. I take them to my cassava farm for practicals. Then they uproot manually, and then they see the way the harvester does it. And then you can see blisters, already 5. That's 5. The soil was not that hard. 5 blisters. This lady will not go to the farm again. Now, look at this beautiful lady. Just trying to uproot 1 cassava stem for home consumption. Ampesi, we call it in Ghana, ampesi, or fufu. Look at the pain she went through. Wow, wow, wow. Would you like to do this? Will you subject your sister or your wife to be doing this? So, see all those challenges, the solution is that Kwame University of Science and Technology has come out with a mechanical way of harvesting cassava. And we have developed a very light mechanical cassava harvester, a tractor drum. It's just about 280 kilograms. And it's very, very efficient. It's more efficient than most of the imported ones. And this thing has been patented in 2013. So it's about 11 years old. That harvester takes 1 second to uproot a plant when the ground is very hard. And the same time, if you want human beings to do it, they take a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 10 minutes to uproot 1. It is not a joke. We have produced over 50 prototypes, and then we have deployed them, about 35, in Ghana, South Africa, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, and Jamaica. In fact, there are requests from other countries like Madagascar, Mozambique, and other countries, even New Zealand, and then El Salvador. And we have capacity to manufacture to satisfy national and even continental and global demands. This is a patent. It's just a document saying that from 2013 to 2033, I've been granted that exclusive right. Nobody can. But because it is territorial, there are some infringements taking place. And then there are a lot of awards. The Ghana Institute of Engineers gave it the first Excellence Award in 2014. African Prize in Engineering Innovation shortlisted it. Innovation Prize in Africa also shortlisted it. A graduate student of mine published a paper on it for his master's thesis, and as at April, there were about 5,000 reads of the paper. Now, this is the demonstration of this harvester, especially when the ground is hard. This is done in our research field at the university here. And it works best when you plant in rows. And this thing goes deeper than plowing. So it's able to excavate the harvester, the root cluster, bring it to the surface, and you just follow and pick. And it doesn't fear, the size of the tubers at all, the roots. No matter how big it is, as big as yam, it's able to do it well. So this has come, and it is working very well. And this is a product from KNUST. Thank you. So immediately after plowing, after harvesting, the field is plowed. So it has also got some sort of inbuilt conservation agriculture practice. You don't burn another set of fuel to, plow again. And look at this student, look at this size of the cassava. So, the science of why the young ones are not interested in agriculture is because of the drudgery, the pain involved. And this is showing the profile of the heartbeat of workers. This was done in South Africa. The heartbeat is actually something, I'm not a medical officer, I'm not a useful doctor, but we have borrowed that technology to say that you can use the heartbeat to estimate the pain somebody is going through. If you are afraid, your heartbeat can show if you are happy. But if you are doing physical work, then your heartbeat will actually calibrate with clinical precision the pain it is going through, and then you have a very high heartbeat. So the top profiles are the heartbeat of two women in South Africa, Regina and Emily, who were just assigned to harvest 10 stems. And between the two of them, they took 70 minutes to do that. And the lower profiles are the heartbeat of the tractor operator, who the previous year was doing harrowing. And then when the cassava is mature, the day the women were harvesting, he was harvesting about a hectare of the same cassava farm. You can see his heart rate, that he wasn't feeling any stress at all. And this is what we want to promote. So, mathematically, this is the equation for the rest period, or the drudgery. If the work you are doing is so tedious, the P here, the denominator here will be very high. And once it is high, the left-hand side will be very small. And then when you multiply this, it means the work that is difficult, you stay longer to rest than to be on the job. But if the work is easy, the left-hand side of this equation will also be high, and then you actually stay shorter to rest than and the longer the rest period is an indication of how tedious or difficult the work is. So this is a typical example of when the harvester performs. You see the cassava is exposed like this, so you just go and pick it. The harvester can harvest yam, sweet potato, and even Irish potato. And we have done it, and it has been very, very successful. This is a profile of cassava, because within the cassava, the most important component is the starch. Now we're profiling at what stage do you have the highest yield of starch? And we tried 7 varieties, and we realized that up to 12 months, you can harvest the cassava. So there's no need now to let the cassava log the land for more than 12 months, because what you are looking for at the starch will start decreasing after 12 months. And this is something we need to package for cassava growers so that the cassava becomes an annual crop that people can be doing, and then they will benefit so much. This is just some rough estimate I've done, that if you harvest fresh cassava now, the prevailing price, the one that is not good for fufu, is about 1,500 cedis per ton. That is the equivalent of aboboya. And if you translate that per hectare, it's about $2,800. Now, if you use the same cassava to make gari, for a hectare, you get $3,600. If you use it to make high-quality cassava flour, you get $4,125. If you use it to brew ethanol, you get $4,700. So, And then now, on the last column, you can see that we have cocoa, which is our major export crop, grown on the most fertile land in this country, but it doesn't form part of our diet. And the area under cocoa is about 2.7 million hectares. If we should get the same equivalent area under cocoa on marginal lands and grow cassava, we will be realizing between 12 to getting to even $20 billion a year. Do you think our countries will be going begging IMF and then the World Bank for loan? No. So these are some of the benefits we can do if we properly inject technology. These are some of the products we can get from cassava, from the high end of the ethanol through, a lot of this in the paper industry, in the plywood industry, in the textile industry, and all, even bioplastic to take care of the maintenance of the synthetic plastic now. Now, the future is planting cassava. The new one is, and this is what we need. We need to change the pattern the smallholder farmers have been doing cassava cultivation from the random haphazard to the planting in rows or preferably on ridges. And when we do that, the benefits are tremendous. So this is planting on ridges. And the ridges is, you see, cassava is drought resilient. It can actually resist a lot of heat. And it can grow also on marginal lands. But unlike cereals, it cannot tolerate floods. So with a little flood, all the roots will get rotten and you lose all your distance. So planting on ridges is actually a conservation agricultural practice and also a precision agricultural practice. This is a typical example. The tractor you use, if the ridges are far apart, you just have to take the reciprocal of the track width of the tractor and then plant the plants on the ridge like that, and you will not actually lose anything as far as the plant population density is concerned. Now we don't have ridges in the country, so I've tasked one of my students to build one, and we built it, and then it worked like magic. So this is good for cassava farmers. And now we are working on it to perfect it for weeding. Because if farmers adopt this technology and they plant in rows, and then there's no need for them to looking for young ones to come in, so we can use the ridger to weed. So all the activities involved in the cassava production will be mechanized. This is also another one, but this is a new one we are developing, but it's also not so different. Now, what is happening is that we have solved the issue of harvesting during critical times, but then it comes to the issue of peeling. This is how cassava is peeled. It's peeled mostly by women. So this is a young lady, a young girl, and this is SDG 5, gender equity, and this is done by women most of the time. So we cannot harvest a hectare like that and then allow it to be peeled this way.
So, sorry, Prof. Sorry to disturb. I think
I'm closing.
We are closing.
So we have developed a peeler, a mechanized one, that also works very well, but because of the moderator. Now we are even drying cassava very fast. So we have developed a slicer. So we just peel that cassava, we slice it into very thin films, and then we dry the same day, rapidly. And we get high quality cassava flour. And these are all happening here. We have even developed a mini set yam planter. Then we are also using robotics in this cassava farm to make it smart and sexy. We use drones to actually take a lot of data on the field. Like even this is my research farm. At the university here, the area, and then even the contours and everything. And then we look at even to map the soil in terms using the normalized differential vegetative index to locate the nutrient levels. We can even use it for seeding, we can use it for even irrigation, for spraying, and so on and so forth. So we are actually injecting modern technology into agriculture now and to make it attractive to the youth. So in conclusion, Mr. Moderator, intellectual property right is very important for Africa, and it is necessary to motivate the innovators. The device you have seen is the first mechanical cassava harvester developed at KNUST for Ghana and Africa. And we think Africa must develop cassava from being a food crop to become an industrial and export crop to satisfy sustainable SDG 1, 2, and 9. And then a well-developed cassava value chain actually represents a multi-billion dollar market, as you have seen in that slide. And the tech mechanical cassava harvester will actually unlock the huge potential of the crop on the continent. And cassava farmers, strata operators, policymakers, donors, and development partners to support the use of this. And cassava must be planted on ridges to increase yield and to promote. And also, this cassava mechanization research actually also accelerates Malabo Declaration 2025, STIZA 2024 and 2034, and Africa Agenda 2063, because Africa Agenda 2063 Aspiration 1 is a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. And Goal 5 is modern agriculture for increased productivity and production. And we want to actually do away with the hoe and the cutlass. And all these things are being satisfied. And then to conclude finally, colleagues, this is the South of Africa. I think most of you have seen this before, but it is worth repeating for emphasis that Africa can swallow US of A, mainland China, India, the whole of Europe, and Japan. And we still have a lot of space to spare. And our population is just about 1.5. And they are always hammering on us that we are overpopulated. Just to put fear in us, to stop procreation. Meanwhile, we have the largest arable land. So I think we should take advantage of the arable land we have, because we cannot flood the whole place with human beings. We need to mechanize so that we can do agriculture better and then live a more healthy life, so that we stop the young ones from risking their life to trek through the Sahara Desert, and some of them die out of thirst in the Sahara Desert. Those who survive the heat drown in the Mediterranean. In fact, we should even now rename the Mediterranean the Dead Sea or the Red Sea, rather, and then take that, the one that is close to those people who are fighting there, give it another name. So the recommendation is that we need to establish pilot projects, of mechanized 1 hectare or 1 acre cassava farm growing district to empower the stakeholders. We need to upscale and disseminate this proven technology on the continent to generate employment and create wealth. And Africa must promote this innovation to domesticate Africa Agenda 2063, STIZA 2034, and SDGs. And Africa must patronize made in African goods and innovations to motivate African scientists, innovators, and inventors. Thank you very much for your attention.
I think Prof deserves a standing ovation, yeah, for such a good presentation. Yes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Because of time, ladies and gentlemen, we request that we push the question and answers, because I know that everybody wants to ask. We push them to the after lunch questions when we talk about higher education. But for now, we go for a break and then we quickly come back. May we request that we probably do 15 minutes a break, we eat and then come back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Prof, for such a wonderful presentation.